Welcome to the first Association of Jewish Libraries Capital Area Chapter Program for the fall of 2023. We are excited about bringing you this special program and appreciate your attendance. During these difficult times for the Jewish people, it is especially important that we connect with each other and connect with others in our communities to disseminate information about the Jewish people, their beliefs, and their history. We pray for the safety of all those in Israel who we view as our brothers and sisters, and that the war has a speedy ending. A thank you goes to Classroom Without Borders for partnering with us tonight and their commitment to combating anti-Semitism, genocide, and hate. A thank you also goes to our National Association of Jewish Libraries for their support. And a special thanks goes to Jackie Ben Ephraim for her technical support and total dedication to AJL. I wish to thank Gail Shirazi, our Vice President, for her hours of work to support our chapter and the creativity and knowledge that she brings to the Capital Area Chapter. A thank you goes to Nahi Gerstein for her accuracy and attention to detail in maintaining our treasury. Our speaker tonight, Sarah Birnbach, rather recently began a new career as a nonfiction author with the book, A Daughter's Kaddish. Sarah has written this memoir, A Daughter's Kaddish, My Year of Grief, Devotion, and Healing, which was published by Wanderwell Press in September 2022. The book is now available on Audible, and Sarah is reading it. In Judaism, the fifth commandment is to honor our parents. Sarah exemplified a commitment to this commandment by her 11th month journey to honor her father's soul. In doing so, she broke with Jewish tradition as a woman reciting daily Kaddish. She incorporated twice daily religious and spiritual practices into her hectic schedule, and ultimately discovered how the path of faith can lead to true healing and transformation. Nathan Risen, a reviewer of our very own AJL newsletter, wrote, A Daughter's Kaddish is recommended as an engaging reading for women who might consider saying Kaddish for a parent, as well as to men and especially rabbis and lay leaders, so that they may be more supportive of women who want to say Kaddish for a parent, as it is a worthwhile emotional and cathartic experience. It is for both men and women, as well as the hope that their devotion and prayers may help elevate the soul of their loved ones. Sarah has written articles appearing in numerous publications, including the Jewish Orthodox Feminist Alliance and the Michigan Jewish History Journal. She previously had successful careers as a human resource management consultant and a family therapist in a juvenile court. Journaling since she was a teen, Sarah's love of journaling led her to become one of the country's first certified journal facilitators. Her education includes a bachelor's degree in sociology from George Washington University, a master's degree in human resources from American University, and a master's degree in social work from the University of Maryland. She lives outside Washington, D.C. with her husband. Her passions include frequenting local bookstores, traveling, dancing, and being an active grandma to her 7 grandchildren. She has also begun work on her next book, where she retraces her father's journey through the front lines of World War II in Germany. Sarah will speak about her book for about 30 minutes, and it will be followed by an opportunity for questions and answers. I ask each of you, if you have questions, to put them in the chat directly to me. I will put my name in, but if you could direct the questions to me, my name will be in the chat. Please do not send your questions to all the participants. In the chat page, there is also a link to order Sarah's book. AJL gets a percentage when you use this link. And also Nahid Gerstein, you can send her an email if you have any questions or you would like to pay your AJL capital area chapter dues, which are very, very nominal. I will now present Sarah Birnbach, the author, who will speak to us about her book.
Thank you so much, Ellen. Thank you, Gail, and thank you for the invitation to be here. And thank you for all who are participating tonight. An award goes to my friend Adriana for being the person at the furthest distance. She is on this call from Brazil. Thank you, Adriana. On my 21st birthday, my father was sitting Shiva for his father. And thinking about his own mortality, he asked me to hire a man to say Kaddish for him. He had only daughters. And at the time, I was so taken aback that I just said, okay, Dad. 23 years later, my father was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And in that interim, I had learned to read Hebrew. I had had an adult bat mitzvah. Both of my children were b'nai mitzvah. And I no longer felt that I could keep that promise to my father. So I appealed to him. I felt I needed his blessing. And I convinced him that reciting Kaddish is not an obligation of gender, that reciting the mourner's Kaddish is an obligation of descent, of progeny, of the child. My father was not a religious Jewish man. My grandfather had been Orthodox, and my father had grown up with an Orthodox father. But my father didn't observe any of the Jewish rituals. But on one thing, he was adamant. He believed that the redemption of his soul depended on having the mourner's Kaddish recited for him in the traditional way, twice a day, every day, in synagogue, in the presence of a minyan. Now, today I actually saw at the Olney Theater, Fiddler on the Roof, and I was reminded of Tevye, who was caught between tradition and the feminist ideals of his daughters. And I imagine my father was in the same kind of position, caught between the traditional values of his father and his feminist daughter, who wanted to undertake this tradition on behalf of my father. I was devoted to my father. I loved him dearly. And he believed that this was the way to redeem his soul. And I finally was able to convince him, or I don't know if I ever convinced him, to be perfectly honest, but I was able to get his blessing. And when he died in 2000, I undertook the recitation of Kaddish twice a day, every day, in synagogue for the full 11 months. Now, let me just tell you that I belong to an egalitarian synagogue in Bethesda, Maryland. But my job required me to travel all over the country. And so I wasn't always in my home synagogue. During the course of my 11 months, I encountered some challenges that I hadn't anticipated and that my father hadn't warned me about, such as being in a conservative synagogue with 9 men and me and being unable to recite the Kaddish. I sat Shiva for my father in Florida, which was where my parents were living at the time of his death. And when I stayed beyond Shiva to support my mother, I went first to my parents' synagogue to recite Kaddish. And the first thing that happened, the first day after Shiva, was I entered this synagogue and I was told, take off your talit. Women don't wear a talit. It wasn't a request, it was a demand. And that was the day I understood that reciting Kaddish as a woman was different than reciting Kaddish as a man. My story is not only a feminist story, and it's not only a father-daughter story, but it's also a story of perseverance. I traveled around the country, and there were times when I was embraced for my practice, and there were times when I was not embraced for my prayer practice. I want to share an experience that I had in Lansing, Michigan, excuse me, to emphasize the importance of community. When I was offered an opportunity to work in Lansing, I did as I did with all of my clients at that time. I said, I can only come if I can find a place to recite the Kaddish with a minyan in the morning and evening. I was educating my non-Jewish clients to this tradition. And unfortunately, in Lansing, Michigan, there is a large conservative synagogue that did not answer my emails or my voicemails. And there was a conservative synagogue that did not have a morning and evening minyan. The nearest synagogue with a morning and evening minyan was in Flint, Michigan. And I thought I was going to have to drive to Flint, recite the Kaddish, then drive to Lansing and make sure I wasn't late for work. And then I got a call from a man named Alan Falk. He told me that he was the ritual chair of Kahilat Israel and that he understood I was coming to town and needed a minyan. I said, I thought your synagogue didn't have a morning and evening minyan. He said, we don't. But when someone needs a minyan to say Kaddish, it is our obligation as Jews to perform that ritual. He picked me up at my hotel. He took me to someone's home. There were more than 10 people there. I recited the Kaddish, and the hostess made a meal that I am sure would exceed anyone's Thanksgiving meal for everyone that was there. The next morning, he picked me up again, and I recited the Kaddish in the presence of a minyan in their synagogue. And that experience taught me that reciting Kaddish isn't only for the soul of the deceased, but it also gives the community an opportunity to perform a mitzvah. When I thanked those people for putting together a minyan for me, they thanked me for giving them the opportunity to do that mitzvah. And that was a huge aha moment for me. All that time I had thought that I was doing this exclusively for my father's soul. And it turns out that when we come together as a community and we support each other as a community, we actually give each other the opportunity to do marvelous things. Right now, so many of us are suffering grief, despair, heartache over what's going on in the Middle East. And more than ever, the importance of community is significant. It is so important now that we come together to support one another. Today happens to be my mother's yahrzeit, and I was in synagogue this morning to recite Kaddish for her. And one of the members of our congregation is the cousin of one of the hostages. And he found some solace in being in the presence of other Jewish people who understand, who get it. Now, people have asked me, well, how did you remember everything to put in your memoir? I mean, how did you remember all these facts? And Ellen has mentioned that I have been journaling since I was a teenager. It is part of my meditative process. It's, for me, less expensive than a therapist. And in that 11 months, I filled 4 journals. We'll show them to you. These are the journals that I filled in the 11 months that I recited Kaddish. Because in addition to attending synagogue every day, I journaled every day. It helped me stay grounded. It helped me heal. Not that we ever heal from grief. It helped me be in touch with my father. And it helped me to express my feelings at God. I was angry at God for taking my father when he did. My father was 76 years old. He was vibrant. He played sports every week. He played golf. He shot 3 holes in one in the last year of his life. And it gave me a place to vent all my anger at God. I believe in the power of journaling. And for those of you who are librarians, I think that libraries have a very important role in supporting not only reading, but also writing. I also want to share that another thing that I learned in my 11-month journey is that Judaism's mourning rituals are some of the most powerful rituals of Judaism. We're all familiar with the Passover Seder. We're familiar with lighting the Chanukiah, the menorah at Hanukkah. But if we haven't lost a loved one, many of us are not familiar with Jewish mourning rituals. And I discovered the power and the beauty of those rituals from the minute we buried my father. Because the first thing that we do, the people that are around us, they help us with the actual burial by taking a shovel and putting dirt on the grave. Then, as the mourners leave the cemetery, the community comes together and forms 2 lines for us to walk through, to look at the people who are there to support us and know that we are not alone. During Shiva, my sisters and I were in Florida, and we didn't have our home communities with us. But the people who knew my father and shared stories of him during Shiva made him come alive as if he were alive in the room. And I loved the stories because even though I knew my father well, I didn't know him as a golfer. And his golf buddies shared some of the most amazing and endearing stories of my father that just warmed my heart. We have Shloshim, and then we have 11 months. And those 11 months, we surround ourselves in the minyan with people who understand grief. There is no one in the minyan who says, "Aren't you over it yet?" And in my memoir, I wrote the story about a man named Ralph. I actually sat next to his daughter this morning because she's saying Kaddish for her mother. There was a morning in January when Ralph stood to recite the Kaddish, and I noticed that he was crying. And I went to him and I said, "I see that you are shedding some tears. Who are you grieving for?" And he said, "My father. This is the 60th yortzeit for my father. He died when I was 4 years old." And one of the things about minyaneers that we don't see in the outside community is that minyaneers understand that grief has no expiration date. When you cry, even 60 years after a death, people in the minyan understand it. They don't say, "Don't you think it's time to get over it now?" Minyaneers understand grief, which is why right now, with so many of us grieving, it's a good time to be part of a minyan. The Jewish mourning rituals, they help us reintegrate. What they did for me being part of the minyan was it gave me a place every morning where I could think about my dad, I could remember my blessings, I could thank God for my blessings, and I could grieve and know that I could go on with the rest of my day because I had already shed tears for my dad. And I knew that that evening I would have another opportunity to do the same. And what it did for me was it helped me compartmentalize that grief so that when I went back to work, when I was helping my son with his homework, I wasn't showing visible signs of my grief because I knew I had a safe place to do that. being part of a minion helps us achieve a new normal, if I can use that word, because after we lose someone, our lives are different. We're never the same. For me personally, having a love for Israel, I know that I will never feel the same after October 7th as I have felt before. And being in the presence of the minion this morning was very, very, it gave me such solace. It gave me such peacefulness. It was like a meditative experience. Our Jewish rituals help us mark time. They help us structure our world. They help us connect with our history. Why did I try to write and then publish my memoir? I wanted to inspire other people to take part in a minion. Sometimes someone may say to you, I'm grieving, I'm going to go to the minion, we need 10 people. I did an author talk for a sisterhood in New Jersey a few months ago. And after I was finished, one of the women said to me, you know, we get calls all the time to be part of a minion. And I always just thought, oh, somebody else will do that. I don't need to do that. But now, she said, after I talked, she realized the importance of participating when someone else needs a minion. I wrote my memoir to inspire other people to support mourners, not just during Shiva, but in the long term. Because as I said, grief doesn't have an expiration date. We go back to work, we resume our normal activities, but the hole in our heart still remains. And so it's important to offer support even 10 months, 11 months, 12 months out. The Yortzeit is such an important part of our Jewish mourning rituals. It gives us an opportunity to remember, and it gives us an opportunity to be amongst other mourners. My father died just before Rosh Hashanah, and my first Yizkor was Yom Kippur. Now, I had been reciting Kaddish for him at that point for about, I think, 10 or 12 days. And often there are other mourners in the synagogue who would rise, and I might hear 2 other voices or 3 other voices with me. But on Yizkor, when there are many people that rise and many people saying Kaddish, I felt embraced by being in that community. I wanted, and I think Ellen alluded to this, to inspire rabbis and lay leaders to encourage women to recite the mourner's Kaddish. And I wanted people to know that they should be, and I hope they will be, present for those who are grief-stricken. I know I want to allow time for people to ask questions of me. I'd like to open it up now for questions. I think, Ellen, you were directing people to send questions to you. I'm happy to answer any and all questions that people may have for me.
Okay, thank you so much, Sarah. I have 2 questions that came so far. Well, actually, I have more that are coming in. One question, and so they're coming in. One question that I thought about myself was, how did your family react to the book? I know you mentioned your mother just died when it was going into publication. How was what was the reaction from your family?
My middle sister, Lois, was very supportive. She read many, many drafts. She read drafts of chapters, drafts of the whole memoir. She was one of my most ardent supporters. My sister Jane chose not to read it for whatever reasons. I did show an early draft to my mother, and her comment to me was, "This only makes me miss your father more." And I took that as a sort of implied permission, if you would. I don't believe either of my children have read it. My son is not a reader. My daughter-in-law has read it, but My son lived the experience with me because he was still at home when I was reciting Kaddish. And I think he didn't need to reread about all the hurried dinners and the I can't check your homework now, I got to get to synagogue, and all the Saturday mornings when I wasn't available to do carpool to soccer games because I was in synagogue. So I think he probably thinks he knows the story.
I was wondering, do you think that your interaction with your mother, you mentioned that she had mellowed and it was a more positive relationship the last 2 years of her life. Do you think that was affected by changes in you, or would it have happened anyways, or did the saying the Kaddish have an impact on it? What do you think did to improve this relationship?
My husband and I moved my mother to Maryland in 2018 after it became very clear to me that she had dementia. And we wanted her to live with us. She said she didn't want to be that kind of a burden to us. And so she was at Ingleside, which is 2 blocks from our home. It's a continuing care retirement community, one of the best in the country. She moved in April, and in June she fell and had her 4th hip break. She went from independent living to assisted living. Then in October of 2019, she fell again. She shattered her pelvis, dislocated her hip, broke her shoulder, and was bedridden. And in those last 18 months of her life, I was with her every day. When she had the last accident, she said she was ready to die, and she stopped eating and drinking. And for 7.5 weeks, she lay dying. And I took care of her. And I think that between the time my father died and the time we moved her to Maryland, I was always the first responder. When she had a broken hip, I flew to Florida. When she had eye surgery, I flew to Florida. When she needed help with something, I flew to Florida. And between that and those last 18 months of caring for her right here, I think that mellowed her. I can only speak from my own perspective because I never asked her. But she was very appreciative of me, and she was thanking me more than she ever had before. It's a speculation on my part.
Thank you. There can be ambivalent feelings about parents, and in Judaism we are taught to respect our parents, but the hurts or sometimes aren't that easy to forget. And so I was interested in your experiences.
I just add to that, Ellen,
sure. Yeah.
that the 5th commandment tells us to honor thy father and mother. And I believed in doing that. My father believed that the way to honor him, in addition to getting good grades in school and things like that, was to have the Mourner's Kaddish recited. My mother did not feel the same way about the Kaddish, and I believe that I honored my mother in life by caring for her till the last breath she took.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Can you, someone asked, can you read one entry from your journal? Is that possible, or is it all packed up? Or do you know that?
Right here.
Yeah.
Is there one in particular? Some
No,
of them are.
they just said, can you read one entry from your journal?
Sure. Some of them are actually in the book, verbatim. If you'll excuse me, let me get my book because I will read the prayer that I wrote to God in my journal. Give me just, if you have another question to ask me while I'm looking for this, I will
Well,
absolutely.
Why don't you look for it? But I'm thinking if someone is asks a question about saying Kaddish, and they are Orthodox, and I was wondering if Marlene Mervis, do you want to ask the question yourself? Unmute yourself and ask it. If you have a question to ask Sarah, you can ask it yourself.
Hello, Marlene.
Unmute, Marlene, please.
Okay, I said Kaddish for my my father in 2011 and my mother in 2016. I have a brother and two siblings. My dad, way before, because I was the caregiver more, said right away, who's going to say Kaddish for me? Because he knew my brother would not do it for 11 months, and I didn't hesitate. And I said, I am, I will. And as so, I'm Orthodox. So, and I was at one time very involved in this particular Orthodox shul. So I always went there. It's not that they heard me say, that they responded, I meant to me, but I'm saying it. And a lot of times the name was said, but it wasn't, it wasn't always, I was going to Orthodox shuls where there wasn't a problem so much to have a minyan. And I just, went there. I just wondered how you respond to someone. I always felt that, I never, there's always a thing where you can pay someone to do that for you, pay a male to do that. I felt that was never something I was going to do. I never paid anybody to honor my parents in life. I certainly wouldn't do it in death. And it had to have meaning for me. In some shows, I must say, it was more because depending on my the time wise, I might have gone to a different shul and I was always welcome, but it wasn't, I was doing it more as the obligation, and I didn't feel the sense of community there. But, I knew that I was doing it. So I just wonder, and I do respect all forms of Judaism. I just wondered how you respond to Orthodoxy. And the last thing is, I know that Orthodox rabbis many times feel it is important because otherwise it does push women away from Orthodoxy if they're not allowed to say Kaddish. Thanks.
You're
Thank you.
welcome. I had to attend Orthodox synagogues on a number of occasions because it was the only place I could say Kaddish. And often there were a few times there were 9 men and me. And I will say that in Raleigh, I was in a Chabad. I called ahead. The rabbi thanked me. He said he would get a minyan together for me, and there were 9 men and me. But what he did, read
Ladder.
We did study together, and I felt comforted by that. There was a synagogue in Frederick where there were 9 men and 2 women who wanted to say Kaddish, and the rabbi refused. He just skipped over the prayer. And so I just said it silently. I thought, I'm in the presence of, and I'm here to say it, and I'm going to honor my father, and I'm just going to say it silently.
At the Chabad shul, though, you were allowed to say it, and they accepted that you were one of them? No.
Oh, in the Chabad shul,
Yeah.
they didn't. Now, there was another Chabad in
That's where I was a lot of times, sometimes was going.
Carolina, trying to remember the town. And the rabbi said I could say the Kaddish, but he put me in a classroom. The men were in a sanctuary, and I was in a classroom, and he kept coming in and telling me the page number. And then he came in and said, now we're going to say the Kaddish. They said it's so fast, I couldn't keep up with them. I was like,
Yeah.
But that rabbi, he met me at the door. He brought me inside. He said, this is where you can be there, because I guess they didn't have a mechitza. I was in Georgetown at the Orthodox synagogue. I was behind the mechitza. I did say Kaddish there.
Okay.
So I had different experiences at different Orthodox synagogues. Like I said, my hope in publishing this book is that rabbis and lay leaders will encourage women to do it, because I mean, you have a brother who didn't. I didn't have brothers. And I will tell you that it was only as I was writing this book that I realized, oh, I could have done both. I could have paid a man to say Kaddish, and I could have recited it also. But at the time, it just didn't seem right for
Right.
some stranger who didn't know my
Stranger.
father
Exactly. Yeah. Thank
to pray.
you.
Okay,
So I hope that addresses it. Um,
thank you. Do you want to
I-
read the passage? And then we have one more question from Jackie.
all
Yeah,
right.
and yeah,
Okay. My daughter was in a near fatal car accident in California, and I was called while I was at work.
Mm.
And I just went right to Dulles Airport. I didn't go home, I didn't get clothes, and I was on the plane. These are two journal entries that I wrote while I was on the airplane. God, I've been feeling sorry for myself because Dad is gone. I've been angry at you for all the killing in the Middle East. Yeah, that was in 2000. All the turmoil over the presidential election and all the sadness I see everywhere. I'm grateful for your kindness to my father, yet furious at you for taking him. I cannot reconcile my conflicted feelings. But if this is your way of reminding me of my many blessings, then you have my attention. Rachel, is my daughter, has survived this accident. Thank you, God. I promise that I'll be more mindful. Then later on that same flight, I wrote, thank you, God, for my daughter's life, for saving her and reminding us both of what is most important. My children's lives are your gifts. You gave me the crimson sunset across the horizon with its sky blue and fiery orange streaks as I write this prayer. You gave me the transparent needle-sharp icicles that glistened in the trees as I drove to work this morning. You gave me the deep green of the fir trees set against the bubble-gum-colored sky. You created a rainbow of color in today's early dawn. I have allowed the sadness of these past 3 months to blur my vision of your many gifts. If today's accident is your wake-up call, a reminder of your presence and of all the blessings I have awakened. I will carry this gratitude with me beyond my Avela period.
very moving. Someone has asked whether you are still journaling, and you can mention your workshop because people are interested in the journaling aspect.
Yes, I journal. I don't journal every single day, but since October 7th, I've been journaling a lot. I am going to be doing a journaling through grief workshop through My Jewish Learning, starting on the 5th, this Tuesday, 4 sessions, the 5th and the 12th of December. Then I am leaving for Israel, where I'll be volunteering on an IDF base. And so the next 2 sessions will be the first 2 Tuesdays in January. And I don't know if I have a link. Let me look very quickly.
Okay.
I have a link and I can put it in the chat.
Yes,
If you
put it in the chat. Yeah. Okay, and I think we have Jackie. We'll close. Did you have a question, Jackie? I saw that.
Actually, it was another comment on the thread of saying Kaddish from the Orthodox Minyan. And then after, and as soon as Sarah said she was reading the passage about her flight when her daughter had the accident, I think that's a much better place to end the discussion. I really need to thank Sarah personally, who I was fortunate to meet right when I started being an Avela for my mother. The week before our in-person conference in Philadelphia, a year and a half ago. And it was like my mother was looking at her watch. Oh, wait a minute, Jackie has to go to conference. I have to go now. Bye. And to get through, to go from being with a huge family saying, sitting Shiva, and then all of a sudden, you have this conference. How am I going to manage saying Kaddish? Both Sarah and, of course, Gail Shirazi, I know you're hiding in the corner there, also helped facilitate the ending the week of Shiva there. But the book was like one of those right at the right moment things for me then. But But I was just saying, when I said Kaddish for my father in Israel, they let me stand with 2 other women, as long as I wasn't speaking by myself. So an AJL member facilitated that too.
Thank you, Jackie.
I,
It's a privilege.
I'm sorry to jump in and I'm not on live. I think I texted, I wonder if the recording would be available at
Yeah.
some point. This is remarkable, just a remarkable session. Thank you.
Thank you.
The recording will be available tomorrow, or the next day. There's under the publications page in the Association of Jewish Libraries, there's a link to our public recordings.
And that will stay up for a while. I want to share these with some people I know in Israel.
Okay, give me a minute, I'll go find the link. Hang on.
Wait,
It won't be there. It won't be there for a day or two. It's have to edit it.
And
Jackie-
what site do we go to?
Jewish. One second, I'm going to drop it. Then let me get to where it is.
will it be available for the public or just members of AJL?
For the public, but I'm going to cut off the meeting in the beginning.
Okay, good.
So
Yeah.
just give me a minute here.
That's very appreciated and I think will be very well received.
Do you want to put the link, Jackie, if you have it?
Give me a moment. I wasn't prepared to answer that, so.
For people who want to see the link. Also, I don't know if my email is on, if anybody has a comment, they can,
Chat, Ellen.
what?
Drop your email in the chat, and Sarah, if you also said you
Okay.
had wanted to. I mean, you don't have to, but if you want to.
What,
My email?
If you wanted to.
yeah, you can put my email in.
Sarah, I have a question. It's
Yes.
Gail. Are you going to synagogue? I guess not as often. Do you miss that routine? Or do you find yourself after saying Kaddish, you're going more to synagogue and viewing it differently?
Yes, I go more than I ever did before. There were 4 of us that were reciting Kaddish for a parent at the same time. And we go to synagogue on the yort sites of each other's parents religiously. When I was in shul this morning, they were there. We became so closely bonded when we were saying Kaddish, the other minyaneers called us the 4 Musketeers. In my synagogue, which is Bethel in Montgomery County, everyone in the synagogue is assigned minyan duty 1 week a year. I fulfill my minyan duty. I also go at times when I feel I need to be in community. I've gone a number of times since October 7th. And like I said, people there, they understand why you're grieving. And when you stand like the Kaddish, people get it. They get it.
Yep.
I do, if I can just make are there any other questions?
I have one more. Was it different saying it? It must have been different. How was it different saying it for your mom than for your dad?
That's pretty
My dad-
personal.
In the importance of it. My mother didn't. I didn't recite the Kaddish for the full 11 months, twice a day, every day for my mother, as I did for my father. First, because she didn't believe in it, but secondly, because I felt I had honored her for the full 19 years after my father's death, but particularly the last 18 months of her life. I honored her in life, and I felt I had fulfilled the commandment in the way that was more important to her. So yes, it was very different. We still have a few minutes. If anyone has other questions, I'm happy to answer them. And I've put my email in the chat in case anyone thinks of questions or wants to have a conversation after this is over.
I've got another one if no one else has one.
Go ahead, Gail.
Journaling. What are you journaling about now? Or do you see it's pretty much the same? Or are you just journaling? Did it change? Did your journaling change after Kaddish? And what are you journaling about now?
Oh, well, right now I'm journaling about
Israel?
well, my thoughts and my feelings, and going to Israel, and how do I reconcile everything that's going on? I make no bones about the fact that I am a Zionist, but I feel for the Palestinians, the innocent Palestinians. So I am doing a lot of writing now about that. But many times I'm writing about how I feel about my children, how I feel about their parenting, how I feel about politics, how if I'm having an important decision to make, I will journal the pros and cons. Sometimes I actually dialogue with my father because I can't get his advice voice to voice. So I journal and he answers me in a dialogue. I'll say something like, Dad, I'm having this issue. Can you help me? And he'll say, well, you know what I would say. And I say, yeah, well, tell me. And I write out the dialogue as if he were talking to me. Sometimes I write about my grandchildren. I keep a journal for each of my grandchildren. I journal in it with funny things they say. My 5-year-old grandson asked me what was my favorite song, and the first thing that came to me was Puff the Magic Dragon. So every time he comes over, he says, Alexa, play Puff the Magic Dragon. And so I've journaled about how cute that is and how, I love him. And is Puff the Magic Dragon really my favorite song? So I journal all kinds of things. If I have important decisions to make, I had a flight to Israel in October. I was asked to wait to come. I had tremendous feelings about that. I wrote them. Sometimes if I'm angry at my husband, I take it out in the journal, and then I don't have to be mad at him. I just vent it all in the journal. Then he and I can go on and have marital bliss.
Well, thank you so much, Sarah. Your honesty, your compassion, your authenticity, it all came across in your book, and it came across in your presentation. Your sensitivity is especially moving to me because we hear comments from people like, can't you get over it? Or these kinds of comments, which do not show that there's a deep understanding of people's sorrow and disappointment. And you totally, utterly understand what the human experience is all about. And I greatly appreciate it. And I encourage everyone to read the book if they haven't, to start journaling, attend your workshop if they're going through grief. I really encourage each and every one of you to do it. And I appreciate everyone's attendance this evening. It was really meaningful to have an attendance like this because we are in such difficult and uncertain times for the Jewish people, and we want to support each other, and that is so very important. Just before we close, is there anybody who would like to introduce themselves?
May I make one more comment?
Yes.
If you have read the book, or if you are going to read the book, and you find it compelling, it would help me greatly, and I will speak on the behalf of all authors, to have you write a review on Amazon and Goodreads. Before I became a published author, I had no idea how important this is to authors. But when we want to be selected for a book fair, when we apply to competitions, those judges look at the reviews on Amazon and Goodreads. And so, as a personal favor to me, if any of you are so inclined, it would be a great mitzvah to me. I want to add my thanks to what Ellen has said for your participation here today. I appreciate it.
I've got one more quick question. I'm sorry, it just came upon me. Do you have any non-Jews read it that have discussed it with you, and how do they see Kaddish? Or
I've
your
had,
Kaddish?
and you can reviews on Amazon by non-Jewish readers. I have had a number of them say to me that, first of all, they've learned a lot about Jewish rituals that they didn't know. And I think that's important because with the increased interfaith marriages, sometimes a Jewish person has a non-Jewish partner who knows absolutely nothing about our mourning rituals. But they have found it compelling. Many of them have said they cried and laughed. People have said to me, I wish I'd read this before my mother died. People have said to me that they learned that you can persevere through difficult times by reading my memoir. Non-Jewish people have also told me that that they appreciated the father-daughter relationship. I had a woman who said, I want to take you to lunch. Your story really reminded me of my father and our relationship. So it has spoken to people on a number of different levels. The feminist part, people have said to me, women do need to be heard. Women do need to stand up for themselves. Thank you for paving the way for women to stand up for themselves in all aspects of our lives. So, yes.
Well,
Thank you.
thank
Thank
you
you.
so much, and may you have a safe journey and stay in Israel. May you be protected by the wings of Shekinah. We have great admiration for your commitment as a Zionist. I have my email address in there. If anybody has a comment or a question, please email me at eshare@whctemple.org. And we look forward to seeing you at future programs. Okay, Jack.
You.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you to everyone. And thank you especially,
Nasiya
Jackie.
Thank you.
Tova. Have a good, safe trip.
Nasiya Tova.
Thank you.
Want to say goodbye. Mute if they want to chat.
Yeah, good.
Leaving for Florida tomorrow, so I'm gonna run. I've got to finish packing.
Well, it's just about dinner
Thank
time
you.
here. So, all right. Thank
Bye.
you everyone for attending. We will email out the recording since I can't access it on this particular computer. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.